morning, everyone. Welcome to our most recent episode of Gargoyles Reawakening.
18th!
I'm Lisa.
Woohoo!
Yeah, it is the 18th, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. You're
Yeah.
right.
It's old enough to smoke.
It is, and it can vote now.
Don't smoke. Don't smoke. Don't smoke.
Yeah, don't smoke, but please vote.
Definitely vote.
Yes, please.
Corral, did you vote?
Yeah, I did.
Did he vote correctly? Did he vote against fascism and bigotry?
Of course, you know me.
Then good. Then you are a Gargoyles fan.
You are a true gargoyle. So I am Lisa, known as Talia Levid on the media. I am joined by the very talented Corel, known as Coda Leia.
Hello, everyone.
And we have our special guest, Greg Vasansky, also known as Greg XB. And on fanfiction, I know he's Greg X.
Yeah, it's kind of evolved.
Welcome.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's kind of evolved over time, that whole X thing. When I first started posting in Station 8 back in 1997, I just went to Xanatos, and then I couldn't shake it. Because at some point I realized, you know what, if you're going to post in a forum for a fandom, don't name yourself after a character from the show, because then people have to distinguish who they're talking about at certain points. But I've never been able to shake it. I mean, so...
I've always known you, I think, as Greg XB. Even, when I would visit like Station 8, I wasn't very active there, but I always remember it being Greg XB. I do remember it starting out as Greg Xanatos.
Yeah, it did.
Yep.
No, first it was just Xanatos, and I started using my real name, but I kept it in there under quotations so people wouldn't think I was a newbie, and then I dropped it, and then it never went away. It never went away.
You are stuck with it, my friend.
Yes, I am. Although if I ever legally change my last name, I'm not doing that. There are certain nerd lines that even I won't cross.
So today we have a lot planned for you. We are going to talk about Awakening with Greg, and Greg has actually been very busy on the fan fiction scene. So we're going to talk to him about some of his recent works and some of the characters he's put into those works. So it's going to be a great show, and we're really excited to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, this has been a meeting in the making. I think we've been planning it for a couple of months now, right?
Yeah.
No, the truth is that the Mike suggested he have me back on here to talk about Demona, and somehow that happened. But now I'm tempted to not talk about Demona. Let's go through Awakening without mentioning her. It'll be like Gargoyles without Demona. And then Goliath got really teary-eyed at that bazooka line on the castle floor, and somehow it accidentally went off and fired a plastic turret. And then Alisa nearly fell to her death.
It's like I watched The Lion King with my son, but we fast forwarded through all the Scar and hyena parts. So it was a very different story, let me tell you. Awakening minus Demona.
Gargoyles minus Demona.
Yeah. Oh, I don't even think the show would exist. Well, it would, but...
Very different show. Very different show.
All right. So, in the spirit of all of our shows, we'd like to start off with some trivia. And I truthfully only came up with one. So if you guys have one, go right ahead. So today, we're actually just doing one, and it's a tricky one. At least we thought so. But there is a scene in one of the Awakening episodes where Hudson actually receives his sword. Which episode is it?
That's a good one.
I know, but I'm not going to say.
And I'll repeat. In one of the Awakening episodes, Hudson receives his sword. Which episode is it? And then you can leave your comments or you can leave your guesses in the comments below. And of course, we'll reveal the answer at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's in Awakening Part 4. He finds a stone dragon in the Book of Mechanical Gardens.
And Macbeth showed up a few episodes early. It's okay. All right. Well, I think we are ready to jump into Awakening.
Feet first.
Feet first.
Oh, the funny thing about Awakening is that it's been so long and I've imbibed it so much, I don't remember many of my first reactions to it.
Mm-hmm. I actually experience that same difficulty. Sometimes I have to think back to my 13-year-old self, and it's like, okay, how did I react at that time? Because now, of course, I'm still in awe of the animation, or, I'm still listening to the voice acting. But, sometimes it's not necessarily that same feeling that I received when I would first watch the show. So, no, I know exactly what you mean.
I hear you. I mean, nowadays, I've seen it so many times that when I have it on, I'm usually just I'm less watching it and more studying it, or I just have it on as background noise.
Yep, but we love it all the same.
Oh yeah.
I will start off. Awakening is one of the few shows that actually starts with that cold opening, and I do remember the first time I watched it, it just created that sense of mystery, and I know that's what they were going for, but they didn't start with the theme song. They actually just started with the word awakening, flashed across the screen, and then it brings you into the action that's taking place on top of the Erie building. And of course, we don't know what's going on, but to me, that was the first thing, like that sucked me in instantaneously, because I had to know, what's going on up there. I think if they had started with the theme song and you saw the clips of animation, it maybe would have changed the whole feeling of the show, and maybe you'd be like, oh, I already know what's going to happen. I don't have to pay attention. But I just remember being enthralled by it.
Oh, yeah. And it played in with the marketing, as I recall, because the early commercials for the show didn't even really show you the gargoyles themselves up close.
No, they didn't. They would show like the shadowy figures, or they would show there was like a scene of Alisa looking up at the sky, but I don't remember seeing many of the clan themselves.
Yeah, some of those commercials are on YouTube if you can find them.
I should dig and put them in my library before they disappear forever or something.
My gargoyles folder is huge.
Yeah. But yeah, so after we see that flash of the title, we're brought right to the anime, or to the Erie building, and we see boulders falling. There's definitely some type of attack going on above, and we are introduced to me, one of the most impressive characters of the show. Alisa Maza pulls up in her vehicle, and she's looking up at the sky, and the animators, I can't talk about the kudos that they deserve. You can feel her tenacity. I mean, you just know that this is a woman who has a great heart, but she's on the side of right, and she's going to get to the bottom of this. And you feel that before she even speaks. So to me, that was always really cool too.
This is Walt Disney Television Japan, and they did the best work throughout the entire series by far. I mean, we're gonna be oohing and ahhing over the animation throughout this a lot. Right,
and I promise I won't always refer to the animation, but it was just those two scenes that really sucked me into this. I knew I was in for probably the ride of my life, and I'm glad that's what they were going for.
Although I do like that the first character we meet isn't actually Alisa, it's Officer Morgan.
That's true.
which means Keith David gets the first line of dialogue in the series.
I never realized that it was Keith David too.
Yeah, it is. And Keith does one of the street thugs later on as well.
Yeah, the short, bald, white guy. Just like he is. Hey, Greg made that same joke in the audio commentary. I'm allowed.
Yeah,
It happens a lot in animation to recycle the voices, guys. I guess.
Well, that's fairly common. I mean, most animated shows do that. It's you can't have dozens of people in there, and these people are talented. They have so much range. I mean, I didn't realize that was Keith David until it was pointed out to me much later.
I guess, yeah.
I think I read it in the credits, but I don't remember. I don't remember if I caught on to it right away. I'm guessing I did not. I'll be honest, I was really big into voice acting when I was younger, so I tried to pick out those voices a lot. But I don't recall. I don't believe that I knew that was Keith right away, because he has that very distinctive Goliath rumbling voice. It's not until you see him in movies and things where you hear the different intonations to his voice. But yeah, that's true. He got the first line. I always forget that. Go Keith.
That would be a good trivia.
That should have been. Except I would have messed it up. All right, but then Elisa says, her iconic, or more boulders are falling. Elisa's helping Officer Morgan clear the pedestrians away because apparently pedestrians like to stand under falling debris. And then
Ever been to New York?
I have, actually. But then Elisa, finally sees one of the boulders. She examines it and she says her iconic line of what could be strong enough to leave claw marks in solid stone. And that's where we get our opening of Gargoyles. So we're transported back to 994, where there's another attack going on. And this time it's between Castle Wyvern, the inhabitants of Castle Wyvern, and the Vikings below.
And the funny thing is, I've seen people watch Awakening and criticize this because they're wondering, what's the motive of these Vikings? Why are they doing this? And I'm thinking, have you read history? Vikings were pillaging castles. I mean, that's what they did. They didn't need a motivation. It was all about
Vikings. Yeah.
Yeah. It was about profit more than anything.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, steal the treasures, ransom the princess, sell everyone else off as slaves.
All in a day's work. But yeah, that's exactly it. They didn't need a motivation. And so they wanted to overtake the castle and take the treasures inside. So this battle is going on. It comes down to, it looks like Wyvern is trying to delay the men. You even hear the captain say that, at sunset we'll be able to have some fun. So we know something is about to happen, but we don't know what. We haven't been immersed into that yet. Hakon, of course, he's the Viking leader down below. He's getting antsy. He wants to take this castle, take his pillage, and I assume return back home with their bounty. The loot, that's right. So he climbs up. They are able to get into the castle through the use of catapults. They use hook and rope, and they're starting to climb the turrets. Hakon, of course, climbs the tallest turret, and we find him next to a very imposing statue as the last rays of sun go below the horizon. And as we know, magic begins to happen. The stone begins to crackle, and this living creature comes out of it. And of course, we know that's our Goliath. He picks Hakon up, informs Hakon he's trespassing, and he does this very calmly. I mean, I know there's that calm but deadly tone to his voice, but he's very calm. He's definitely not the monster that humans portray the characters later in the series. But he is protecting his home. And so, again, another battle ensues. I really like the intro to Goliath. To me, that really epitomized his character. He's the thinker. He can be very blind in his rage and his emotions. But above all, he's all about protecting the castle. And he just wanted that invader to be out.
Yeah, Hakon is a little bit lucky that the sun didn't go down when he was one turret level below, because that would have been where Angel of the Night was, and he'd probably been dead right away.
She would just sliced him to ribbons, exactly.
We are glad that he didn't was next to Demona's statue at that time, I guess.
Well, we'd have no show.
The end.
The end.
There was a battle. He got sliced to ribbons. Everyone else ran away screaming. The end.
But no, what happens needs to happen. I mean, Hakon needs to destroy the clan. Uncle Ben needs to get shot by the burglar. These things need to happen.
These things need to happen to create character growth. Or to keep
Bruce Wayne has to watch his parents get shot in an alley.
Exactly. I think we have a show coming up about the tragedies in the actual show. We should have you back on for it, Greg.
Nice.
But what I also like about this battle is it is a nice segue to introduce the characters without shoving them in your face. I felt like everything moved very naturally. The trio, we see them on a turret, they're watching the battle, and you instantly know their personalities. Brooklyn is the leader, whether or not he claims to be such. But he's the one who calls his brothers into action. Lexington and Broadway joke around a bit more. And I use their names. I know they don't have them right now. But they joke around.
Oh yeah, because it's easier that way. Because writing characters without name, we'll talk about that later. But it's a pain in the ass. It's a pain
And
in the
brother
ass.
with
It
brother
totally
and
is.
brother.
Yep, I do it all the time. And what I do is I pick like one or two traits, and that's just how they're known. But yeah, we can talk about that later. And then we also see Hudson. He's introduced, and Demona. And Demona's entrance is easily the most impactful of the show. It really shows the fierceness of the females. I mean, they're all fierce warriors, but I think that they went a little more on edge with Demona just to give her maybe that twinge of doubt in your mind. I don't know. It's so easy to look back and have that hindsight now. Maybe they were trying to create this. But
I think they were. I mean,
yeah.
This is one of the few first impressions I do remember. I was watching this, and she is in the shadow. She turns around, spreads her wings, and I'm thinking, who is that? I had no idea I was meeting my favorite fictional character of all time at that moment. I had no idea.
And it's true. I mean, she is the stuff of nightmares. I don't think they have ever had a character, even like Cold Steel, Iago, no one has ever had the same impact to you as a viewer as Demona, as that entrance with Demona. And she really is probably my favorite tragic villain.
She's up there. She's
yeah.
definitely mine, but yeah. But even on the Pantheon itself, when you get a little bit more objective, she's definitely in pop culture's top 10 as far as I'm concerned.
Me too. But she toys a little bit with Hakon. Goliath lands, introduces her as his second. Also introduces Bronx. I forgot Bronx is there too. And then we see Goliath actually just push, or Hakon falls backwards, if I'm not mistaken, right? I am having a moment here.
Goliath throws him.
Yeah, I was going to say Goliath throws him, and he lands in the cart.
Okay.
But with the gargoyles' help, it appears the night is won by Wyvern, and the Vikings retreat. Another thing I always found interesting is how the inhabitants don't thank the gargoyles. And I know this was supposed to be built up in the show, but you would think, these characters also just put their lives on the line. It doesn't seem like it. They have the advantage, they have the strength, they have the wings, the claws. But they did. They put their lives on the line to protect their castle as well.
Keep in mind, at best, they are thought of as the help. At best.
No, and that's very much seen in an upcoming scene with Catherine, where, of course, the captain of the guard, he shows his thanks. He's always associated himself more with the gargoyles than with the actual humans of Wyvern. And he invites the gargoyles to come and appear and be recognized for their bravery. And Catherine, the princess of the castle, along with her magus, they just demean the gargoyles. They talk about having beasts in the dining hall, and sit.
Oh, bit of a trivia, Greg. When Catherine makes that comment about allowing beasts in the dining hall, Greg wanted to show one of the dogs in there eating off of one of the nobles' plates.
Yeah, and that part was not animated, correct? They never completed that scene?
Apparently they did, but Frank Parr thought that the scene looked terrible and wouldn't allow it into the final cuts.
Oh. But of course the dogs are there eating anyway, so...
Yeah, and Frank's a bit of a perfectionist, as we've all met. Frank. Good guy. So,
great guy.
And also, this attitude, I've got to place most of the blame for this on Daddy, the dearly departed Prince Malcolm, just because... Hey, the gargoyles will get you if you don't behave. Hudson will go, why would he do that? We would never harm her. Oh, you're too sensitive.
You're too sensitive, and then she grows up hating them. So, thanks, Malcolm.
And I'm pretty sure the Magus was just doing this because he wanted to publicly agree with the girl he had a crush on.
Right.
That's very true.
No, I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. One of my fan fictions that I've been writing is the Once Upon a Time There Were Three Brothers, which was inspired by Greg's work or his kid. Yeah, he had a story. And I've been trying to build up to that moment where maybe the tides turned. At first everyone was harmonious. But anyway, we can talk about that later, of course. But yeah, those are things I'm trying to bring to the table too. But anyway, Goliath and Demona, they appear before the princess. She shuns them. And they leave. Goliath, of course, is willing to forgive. Demona, not so much. And so they have an argument in the hallway a little bit.
I think forgive is too strong. More like tolerate.
That could be. Yeah. I think you're right. Maybe he's just so used to it now. It's what he expects from them.
He's also doing the whole Martin Luther King thing. And oh my God, I saw this horrible meme on Tumblr just today where someone wrote one of these confessions, and it was a Gargoyles confession. Someone wrote, if Professor X and Magneto are Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and Goliath and Demona are, then Goliath is an Uncle Tom and Demona is Nat Turner. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, that's disgusting. Disgusting.
That's horrible. Oh.
And it completely mischaracterizes what's going on here.
Exactly. Oh, I have to take a moment of silence. But it always is interesting to me, during the entire scene with Catherine and the Magus, Demona had every chance to step in and overrule what Goliath was doing. And she actually is a decent second in command at this point. She never questions him in front of anybody. I mean, she does in the hallway with Robbie there, or the captain of the guard, but she never does it in the actual banquet hall. She growls and her eyes light up, but when Goliath, puts his hand on her shoulder, leads her out, that's it. She follows his command. Mm-hmm. So I always appreciated that, and I always thought that was an interesting trait considering everything that happens later on.
Goliath acted wisely there. I mean, the last thing that they need for her to do is put another scare in her.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Who knows what that could lead to?
Right. But yeah, so
Goliath also has this great moment where we find out really what motivates him, what he believes, about humankind, and why he's more tolerant of them than, say, Demona is.
Mm-hmm.
The nature of humankind, the fear where they do not understand, which we're seeing more and more of every single day in the real world.
Yes.
But let's not go there.
Mm-hmm. But that is one of his great lines. And it is moments like that where you do see those insights into the character where he really could turn on them at any time. They easily outmuscle the humans. But you're right. He's trying to find that understanding. He's trying to find that harmony, which again may be too strong of a word, but he's trying to find that harmony between his people and the humans who inhabit the castle.
He was ahead of his time.
Yeah, totally was. But that's okay, because he'll get to go ahead of his time eventually.
Mysterious cloaked figure.
Yeah, let's go to mysterious cloaked figure. So we see this mysterious cloaked. It's daytime. We see this mysterious cloaked figure leave Castle Wyvern, and
he's wearing a sign. He's wearing a sign around his neck that says, "I am totally the Magus. By the way, it's me, the Magus."
Right, and I know that's exactly what they were going for. And he even uses the whispery voice. Perhaps an agreement can be made, or an arrangement can be made. And you're supposed to think it's the Magus. And it's not until later when the Vikings come back to the castle that you see the gauntlets. But anyway, so mysterious cloak figure makes a bargain with Hakon. He's listening. And they pan back to nightfall. Demona is very insistent with the captain of the guard. They've heard that the Vikings are going to come back. Goliath is encouraged to bring the entire clan to scare them away. And Goliath decides he's going to have a little fun and he can scare them away himself. He only takes Hudson. And so, they follow the tracks into the woods. They see that the horses were carrying very lightly armored men. Hudson is skeptical at this point, and I really think Goliath is too, but I think that urge to protect the castle is more important to him at that time. So they fall for the decoys. They've gone too far away to make it back to to the castle before sunrise. And so the episode with them ends with them struggling to fight the sunrise as they're turning to stone. And then we pan back to the castle. We see those strong hands lifting the gates to Wyvern, and we see the Vikings entering Castle Wyvern. And so, the people are quickly overtaken. And then it comes time where, Hakon and the captain are talking on the parapets. Hakon does have a choice. Of course, he's going to pick the Viking choice. And they destroy the remaining clan.
Yeah, which, by the way, this is a great moment. It's a beautiful shot. And
yes.
A few years ago, I had a debate. Okay, debate is a kind way of putting it. An argument with someone who insisted the way that shot was done was because Disney didn't want to show Hakon actually smashing them. I'm thinking, no, it's a directorial move. We're watching the captain's reaction
right.
to this. It's actually more horrific. I mean, that's a signature move of, say, director Rian Johnson. He did that in the Breaking Bad episode that he was infamous for. I mean, do we need to see them actually shattering? And we see plenty of that later on in the series.
We do. And I don't think we needed to see it here. I think the shadow over the captain's face gave us what we needed. We finally saw, the horror, the guilt. We saw that the captain realized he had unleashed this monster, and he had tried and failed. It was really a look of defeat, which the captain will carry with him for many, many years later. Yeah, centuries.
Never mind what this does to Demona, but we talked about that in another podcast.
Exactly. No, I don't think we needed to see the shadow or the shattering of the gargoyle. We needed to see the captain's reaction. That's what brought the episode really full circle in that moment.
And then we get another iconic moment where Goliath returns to the castle and my angel of the night, and then he just screams to the heavens.
And he screams to the heavens.
Yeah.
And that's the end of Awakening Part 1.
What a note to end it on. It was actually originally supposed to end with them being frozen in stone, but then they ended up going 5 parts. Part 1 was long, and I think that's a great note to end it on anyway.
Me too. And, not because we wanted to see that reaction, but I think we needed to as an audience. It brought that intrigue. It brought more of a relation to the characters, to you. You felt Goliath's sorrow. You felt his anguish. And it was also a really great way to start Awakening Part 2. We pick up where we left off. He's still on her turret. He's still mourning her.
I wondered who that actually was. Who was camping there that night?
Right. Yeah.
There's a running joke between a friend and I where I once joked a few years ago. I bet that's Cold Steel.
I was going to say Cold Stone, but Cold Steel is funnier because he... Yeah, because you would think that their roosts become personalized in a sense.
Yeah.
Kind of like going to your room at night. But yeah, I wonder who decided to invade Demona's bed. That's what she said, I know. We'll leave it at Cold Steel. We'll say it was Cold Steel. Especially because in some of your fan fictions, you kind of bring that to the light. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Part 2, of course, again, as I mentioned, we pick up where we left off. Hudson realizes the bowstrings were cut. He must have informed Goliath. And my mistake, we did not mention that Brooklyn, Broadway, Lexington, and Bronx were sent to the Rookery. But the 4 of them, I'm assuming, hearing Goliath's roar, release themselves from their punishment and really discover that they're the only survivors along with Goliath and Hudson.
And I think Goliath had other things on his mind than them just coming out of the Rookery without permission.
Exactly. Oh, exactly. He instantly flies down to them to see if more had been in the rookery with them. Of course, they were not. There weren't any. And so Goliath is out for revenge. They're going to go rescue the humans, and they're going to destroy the Vikings.
Oh, he's really adamant about murder here.
Yeah. Which you don't see with him very often. But yeah, he definitely is ready for the kill in this episode. And since I didn't talk about them before, so Mary and Tom, two of the peasants, are part of the captors. Or the captives, I'm sorry. They're part of the captives. Tom still has faith that these gargoyles are going to come save them. And Mary, of course, is just crying in her hands. The princess and the magus are being held specifically by Hakon and by the captain up in the caverns. And this was a really interesting line where, the magus, he's not a fighter, but he definitely talks about if he could wield a sword, he would, no, that's later. But he watches as his Grimorum Arcanorum, which isn't named at this point, but his spell book is also being held. And Hakon rips a page out of the book, holds it over the fire, and just laughs. And he talks about how magic spells make him glad he can't read.
Makes me glad I can't read.
Right. And, it, of course, that's very typical back then. But I also think it's a kind of a stab at illiteracy. I don't know. Did you ever feel that too, where it's that stab at illiteracy? Like,
of course
hey,
it is.
I know it is. But if you don't know how to read, you're going to end up like this guy.
Foreshadowing to Lighthouse in the Sea of Time.
Yes, absolutely.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
But the gargoyles arrive on the scene. Another battle ensues. Catherine is able to escape. She's able to run to the cliffs. Hakon and the captain follow her, and Goliath sees this from above. So he follows them. As the gargoyles are battling, the magus is able to get free from his ropes. He grabs his book, and he casts the sleep spell on the gargoyles. Out of rage and grief, he thinks Catherine has met her demise, and the only person he can really lash out at this point is the clan. While this is going on, of course, Goliath is still giving chase. Catherine finds herself on the ledge of a cliff. Hakon and the captain are going to finish her off. I think the captain tries to talk some sense into Hakon. There's really no point because it's Hakon. And Goliath lands. I'm right.
And if you needed any more proof that Hakon's a scumbag, he's the one he wants. He shattered them.
Exactly. But anyway, due to that line, the captain and Hakon get into a scuffle. They start to get closer and closer to the edge. They bump into Catherine. She starts to lose her footing, and Goliath has to make that choice. Save Catherine or get his revenge. And he chooses life. He saves Catherine, and the two men fall below.
One day we'll have to talk about, the episode when we see the souls of Hakon and the
Shadows of the Past.
Shadows of the Past.
Yeah, this one I know that this particular episode marked me because it was like I didn't expect to see that episode in this timeline and everything, so it gives a different point of view about what happened and how it happened.
Totally does. Actually lines up with what Owen says in a few minutes about how the castle has a bad reputation and the locals consider it to be haunted.
Yeah.
Very true.
Goliath brings Catherine back to the castle, to the caverns, and the magus is still there. Goliath notices his clan has been turned to stone. The magus is still furious. He didn't see Catherine right away. So he's about to cast his spell again, and then Catherine steps forward. So, of course, the magus feels terrible, but nothing can be done. The terms of the spell is that they would sleep until the castle rises above the clouds.
Which, as far as Goliath is concerned, means till doomsday.
Till doomsday. I mean, and given the technology back then, I can't blame him for thinking that. So he asks Catherine and the Magus to care for the eggs in the rookery, and he asks the Magus to cast his spell one last time.
He's committing suicide here.
He really is.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think the ideals of being alone is more overwhelming than being a statue for the rest of his life.
Yeah, and it's funny when you think about it. A lot happens this night. I mean, you talk about Shadows of the Past. I mean, as soon as he turns to stone, Demona returns, sees the eggs being taken off, sends herself into exile, and then minutes later, another Demona shows up with a third Demona, and Goliath with the Phoenix Gate. I mean, exciting night at Castle Wyvern. For a brief moment, there were 3 Demonas in one place. We can't do Gargoyles without Demona. Not when there's 3 of her.
Suddenly, there's just a flash of light, and the Phoenix Gate appears, but no one's there. If it was without Demona.
Well, one Demona is already hard to handle, so 3 of them. Oh my god.
All right, so we flash forward to the future. We are now in Scotland, and we see somebody approach the castle. This, of course, will become one of the next other great antagonists of all time, and we see David Xanatos.
One of the greatest villains of all time. By the way, Mr. President, this guy could buy and sell you like that.
Yeah.
Wait, why am I saying Mr. President? 45? I'm not calling him Mr. President. Donnie.
It's okay. It's Sunday. We understand. But Xanatos has bought the castle. He's going to relocate it to his headquarters.
He would be a better president.
He really would be.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I think he built the entire building just to accommodate the castle. So he spent a lot on this.
Yes, he did.
I mean, he would have to specifically design that building just to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right.
He would. Yeah, so really when you think about it, and I know this is more canon, and I mean it's canon, but we haven't seen it yet. I mean he meets Demona in the 70s technically, right? And that's
we don't actually know that.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I know Brooklyn time travels to the 70s with Marion Fenella, and then he also time travels to like 1991 or 2. And Greg says it's a complicated story. He hasn't written it yet, so we don't know when he actually meets her.
We don't know exactly.
But I will say this, as a New Yorker, that considering that Xanatos had to shut down an entire major block, which is Central Park South, this is a major area, and all those gigantic steel beams he was bringing in, all the traffic jams he caused for the year and a half or 2 years that he was building this, he would have been the most hated man in New York City.
But I mean, and he really would have needed to plan ahead to create or to have that building built strong enough to support the castle above it. So I always like to think that he did have a number of years where he was able to plan that out. But knowing Xanatos, he probably had, 2 or 3 locations up his sleeve in case one building didn't work.
I imagine at least one engineer had a heart attack. But let's look at the results. That building is cool.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
With the glass and metal structure, it's beautiful. I wonder if there's a nerd who calculated how much it costs. Like, we have sometimes like how much Bruce Wayne is earning on our everything, like our Max Scrooge.
There is someone on DeviantArt who was trying to totally recreate the design of this thing as a gigantic 3D model.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and he's trying to figure out how the building works, the floors. I mean, it's he's putting a lot into that. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Then Dubai would build a taller building.
Pretty much.
But that's a beautiful building, yeah.
I know it's fiction. I wish a building like that actually existed, that just had the architecture, the beauty of it. But again, off topic. But it is a gorgeous building. But, through many months, I'm assuming, of reconstructing the castle, it's finally put into place. The last gargoyle is set on their turret, and the sun sets. And Xanatos actually turns to the statues, a Goliath statue. He's waiting, and he says, "Don't disappoint me." And he's definitely not disappointed. What were you going to say?
It still doubts, maybe in his mind, that it would work.
Well, he knew the story, and he had visual proof that gargoyles existed. I mean, he knew Demona already. I don't think he would have done this without her, but.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I never thought of it that way. I always thought he just hadn't put a lot of stock into, whether, not stock, that's not the word I want, but I always thought he had just maybe still had that twinge of doubt in his mind. Maybe he thought Demona was tricking him, so to speak, but.
Or just the whole thing wouldn't work anyway.
Right, exactly. But yeah, I guess I never thought about that. I mean, he had the proof in front of him. Demona's right there. They have been allies for some time. But yeah, he still has that little bit of doubt. But yeah, so the clan awakens. They're instantly taken aback by what they see. They're just in shock. Even Lexington can't speak for a minute.
But he's going to love all of this. He's going to love it.
Oh, exactly. If there was any gargoyle that was meant to wake up when they did, it was him. But yeah, so then they are introduced to Xanatos. They're brought into his office.
Not his office, into the Great Hall, which is
into the Great Hall, which is
now a glorified foyer.
Mm-hmm.
Big change from when Catherine is running the place.
Right.
I'd almost like when they see what Xanatos has done with the place.
They should have dedicated.
Mites, yeah.
Nice tapestry, yeah. But they're introduced to Xanatos, and as he's explaining what's happened over the past few centuries, the eggs are gone. They're the last of their kind. They are interrupted by a sound that the gargoyles have never heard before, but Xanatos is clearly familiar with it. It's the sound of a helicopter landing, and he tells the gargoyles to stay where they are. So he leaves the foyer and goes out to see what it is. The gargoyles, of course, don't listen. They do stay in the shadows, but they follow Xanatos. And this is where we are first introduced to the Xanatos Goon Squad. But at the time, the Commandos. Yeah, we don't know at this time that they are working with Xanatos, but
in an early version of the outline, do you know who this is going to be?
In an early version of the outline?
For Awakening, it was going to be the Pack.
Oh, I didn't know that. That would have been an awesome trivia question.
I should have suggested it.
Oh, we should have known that, Carell.
I didn't know.
Yeah, go back sometime and read all those memos that Greg posted about the development of the pilot. They're fascinating, and some of the first writers they hired didn't really get the property, and he could tell he was a little bit frustrated in some of those memos.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The trio are not kids. They're older teenagers. Hudson's not their babysitter.
Right. I always remember, and again off topic, but I always remember the very first pilot that Greg will share where it shows Goliath sitting on top of the trio. He's like in the thinker position and these other three gargoyles are just kind of sprawled out behind him. And that's what that makes me think of, is like Hudson sitting on them instead. No, I didn't know that. I did not know the Commandos were supposed to be the Pack in early development.
That's interesting.
Oh, that's awesome. Learn something new every day.
Yeah. That's the beauty of it.
But yeah, so they get into this battle with the Commandos. Understandably, the gargoyles are a little obviously not familiar with the technology at all. Lexington naturally takes time to ask about it. But the other gargoyles get right into the battle. The lead commando, actually, Bruno, He's kind of my favorite. I don't know. I shouldn't like the Commandos, but I like him. Yeah, Bruno.
His name is Bruno.
His name is Bruno.
Which we don't find out until Monsters, but
Right. He finally gets his name.
Although I do like the one with the long blonde ponytail, but I'll say why later.
That's a redneck name.
Bruno.
And the other
Jeff
thing I
Bennett,
like about
Jeff Bennett doing
Yes.
his best George C. Scott.
Exactly. I was going to say Jeff Bennett being a voice again. So I think he just sometimes has conversations with himself. If we ever get the chance to talk to him, I'm going to ask that. But we also hear one other rare voice actor. Greg Weisman is actually the voice of the Commando who says to Broadway, "Nice mask." So he gets to have his little moment of being a character on his show.
Which he would do even more in later shows when he would give himself actual minor recurring characters. like Donald Menken on Spectacular Spider-Man and the teacher on Young Justice. and I think he was a few stormtroopers on Star Wars Rebels.
I could see that.
Oh.
I really could.
Yes, is an Alfred Hitchcock moment.
So see, Gargoyles sparked that love of his voice acting. That's what happened. But anyway, Bruno steals something. We don't exactly know what until, commercial break. But they lose the gargoyles by just throwing a couple of smoke bombs. That blinds the gargoyles temporarily. And so the Commandos escape with their loot.
We have this great scene where Xanatos tries to convince them to work with him to stay at the castle, and they agree. And I have to give props to Jonathan Frakes' voice acting and the way he plays Xanatos because, and I really hate to keep going back to this, I really do, but he has this line, "The richer you are, the more enemies you have, and I am very rich." Imagine Donald Trump saying that, because and it does not come off anywhere near that.
It would not be that effective.
No, it wouldn't. You would want to just punch the guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God, I keep threatening the guy on the podcast. So.
iTunes will send us a message that we're not allowed to post any longer.
Oops.
Oops.
But still, I mean, and given what we know about Xanatos and the way he conducts himself, this guy is really arrogant, and yet at the same time, he is just so charming there. I listen to that, and I want to go work for this guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And it's true. I mean, this guy is just evil. I mean, in a different sense than, like the Archmage, who's just kind of silly and, I don't know, he tries hard, but he never succeeds. This character has had massive success, and he just basks in it. And he's not afraid to show off his triumphs, and yeah, I don't know if I'd want to work for him necessarily, but yeah,
just stay away from Jenny Tech.
Yeah. Do not become an assistant there. Maybe Scarab Corporation wouldn't be so bad. You never really find out much about them. But yeah, he gives the gargoyles his speech. The gargoyles, I mean, Goliath pretty much shoots him down. We're here, we have to live here, this is my castle, but we're not going to trust you.
But Xanatos has that covered.
Exactly. Truthfully, with the battle over, I'm really just going to wrap it up, guys, if that's okay. With the battle being over, we now pan back to the characters who opened the show. We see Morgan and Alisa down at on the street. The chaos is over, but they still have questions. Morgan turns to Alisa and says, "What do you figure that was all about, detective?" And Alisa finishes the episode with, "I don't know, but I'm going to find out."
We meet our main villain of the series right there, this cop.
She's the worst. No, I'm kidding. The rumors we could start. No, I'm kidding. But that is the first two episodes of Awakening. Just because it's such a massive story arc, it's so hard to summarize it, but hopefully you enjoyed what we have so far. We're going to continue with the episodes later on, to continue with 3, 4, and 5. But we still wanted to focus on our guest, who is Greg. He has a lot of fan fiction that he has been posting with a group of comrades, and we wanted to get in touch with that and find out more about what he's been up to.
Well, I've just been feeling the itch since December. It really started when I write with about 3 other people. There's Algernon 84, Sir Griffin Worm, and Master Draymond, although Master Draymond's only written 1 series with 2 chapters so far. He's doing this time dancer thing that takes place in Hawaii. He's bringing in a lot of Polynesian mythology, which I knew nothing about, so that's been a fascinating thing to read.
That's fascinating, yeah.
Yeah, and Sir Griffin Worm Chip, he's doing a lot of Pendragon stuff and a few time dancers, and Algernon has been doing these Dracula fics. He introduced his version of the Gargoyles version of Dracula, and his Dracula is terrifying. He took a character that frankly has become one of the biggest cliches in fiction and made him scary again.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yes, I give him massive props for that, and he's also doing his own version, his take on Heroes of Ulster, one of the spin-offs about Rory Dugan as Cuchulainn and Molly the Banshee and what happens after the events of that episode. And he's and I'm reading this. He wrote this 4-chapter story, his pilot, so to speak, and I'm waiting for Molly to get her voice back, and it doesn't happen. And he's dragging this out, and he's writing this in a way where having her communicate without dialogue, and it's really effective. I've got to give him massive props for that. She does a lot of sign language, writing things out, but it's still really creative the way he's gotten around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, if people think writing a character without a name is difficult, try writing one without language. Or the ability to communicate verbally. I need to read his works. I've really been slacking off with that. That's fascinating to me. Yeah.
But yeah, I've known them for a while. We've done some stuff before, and I ended up jumping in after they started because I figured, you know what, I'm going to write one fanfic, dip my toe back into this, see how I feel about it. I'm going to write a fanfic without Demona in it because there was a joke that I made about myself, the Demona security blanket, so to speak. I mean,
just can you tell us and everybody where we can find these fanfictions?
Fanfiction.net under my name on there is Greg XB. I've also got, or is it Greg X? I forget. So I should know better. I should know better. I'm also on Archive of our own. They're not. We've talked about starting a WordPress and just throwing this stuff up over there, but we haven't gotten around to doing that yet, and we don't even know what the hell we're going to call this thing if we even give. Yeah, it's Greg X on fanfiction.net.
I was going to say it's Greg X on fanfiction.net. Yep.
Yeah, I should have known that. But we still have to decide what we're going to call it, if anything. But I feel like we should have an overall title for this thing. I mean, it's just something we do for fun. It's not like, say, back when I was doing the Gargoyles saga about, almost 20 years ago now. Oh my God, where, I mean, we don't overly plan things out. We mostly take things one story at a time with vague ideas of where we want to go next. Although future plans are becoming more and more, because the more you write, the more you plant seeds for the future, and we've all planted seeds for something we were building. My last fanfic, The Scottish Play, ended on a big one, which Lisa, I think you've read it and you know what's going on there.
Yes, I do.
But my first fic that I got back into, when I got back into it, was Sorrows to the Stones. It was my take on the Shakespeare play Titus Andronicus, and I've been trying to figure out how to do this story for a very long time because these figures they're mostly Romans. They're not historical. So when I read an article about a Roman ship found at the bottom of the Rio de Janeiro Bay, I figured, okay, I've got my excuse. I'll create a fictional kingdom here. And I had to write gargoyles there without names first, and that was a real pain in the ass, as you just said. I mean, it's hard because you have to describing them or come up with little nicknames, which I had Brooklyn do in his head. And at one point, I mean, I was rereading it a couple weeks ago, and I noticed Tamara's name was in the prose before it's given to her, and nobody noticed that somehow, and I quickly fixed it, but I have no idea how the hell that slipped.
I didn't catch that either, and I've actually read the story a few times now. I did notice, I don't want to say this on air, but I did notice you had Brooklyn's eyes turning red in one of them. Sorrows to the Stone. Yeah.
Oh God, I have to fix that. I have to fix that.
It's
and I know better.
Like the sixth line now. No, it's okay. It's okay. I was going to bring it up to you so we can edit this out. Nobody will ever know. But it's in one of the first lines. Let me see. I'm looking at it right now. It's like the 7th line down. Brooklyn slowly rose to his feet.
Though I find it very refreshing that there are still some people who are writing Gargoyles fan fictions, because there are so many years which had passed, and I thought that maybe like the interest was dying with the years. So
was waning. Yeah.
And Tamara is a character I came up with back in 1999, honestly, when I went to a production of Titus Andronicus at the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. I tried to bring her into TGS. It didn't quite work out there. I tried elsewhere. This is my 3rd attempt to bring her into fan fiction, and it finally took. I mean, she's she survives all this, and I worked very hard to make her very distinctive from Demona. And at first, that was a bit challenging, because you've got this female gargoyle. She becomes immortal. She's more dependent on what the Illuminati use for immortality, and she sort of becomes an ex-girlfriend of somebody. There's a lot of Demona there, but I said it's okay. She has very different goals. She's not genocidal. She doesn't hate humans, and she doesn't blame other people for her own mistakes. She's a dedicated member of the Illuminati now, and she sees the Illuminati as her clan. You can decide if that's a good thing or if that's just messed up. But I was going to say, she does fit very well into the world that you've created with your counterparts. And as soon as I read Sorrows to the Stone, I was like, this is what Tamara was supposed to be, because I very faintly remembered her, just kind of back and forth. And I was like, this is what she's meant to be. She's evolved. She's turned into the character she needs to be. Yeah, she's changed over the centuries. I mean, when I was coming up with her clan, the Goth clan, for lack of a better name, because they figured, okay, Romans call all their enemies Goths is a slur by that point, though she's embraced it by then. By now, but different clans have different things they protect. Greg has a Korean clan, the Pukan clan, that protects justice, specifically poetic justice. So I was thinking about that, and it came up with she protects balance. Her clan protects balance. That fits in with how Duvall founded the Illuminati to make things right. Granted, it's a very self-serving version of balance, and as we've seen, balance is not always necessarily a good thing. Right. Star Wars prequels.
Oh, it's so true.
So yeah, she was my first OC, which is ironic, but she became one of the last ones that I ever brought to fan fiction or anything else. And she's in there, and I try not to overuse her. I mean, she usually has like a one scene cameo at the end of some fix, because I've also realized I need a big bad Illuminatus. I mean, I need someone that's really high up the pyramid, and Duvall and these characters, I mean, I use them sometimes, but they're mostly on King Arthur's side of things, or Pendragons. I'm letting Chip take points on them, and so I needed someone who Shari will answer to, most likely. So she's in charge of, as I revealed in a recent fic, all Gargoyle matters related to the society. So I'm not saying she created the Quarrymen. She didn't, but she definitely signed off on it.
Ah, that's right.
She's got a long-term plan, and she's got her goals. She's not trying to destroy her own people. She's helping her own people, at least in the way she thinks she is. But isn't Demona doing that also?
Exactly. They just have different ideals of what that is.
Although between you and I still haven't decided whether or not she knows of Demona. I don't know if Demona knows about her yet or not. I haven't decided if they had ever met or not. I keep going back and forth. The one thing I do know is that she is terrified of Demona. But who wouldn't be?
Exactly.
Demona's Demona's a big monkey wrench in her plans, and also if Demona knew about her and what she's doing and her collaboration or membership in this society, which Demona already regards as a threat, I don't think Demona would take that well.
No, I don't think so either. And as much as Demona talks about wanting gargoyles to take over the planet, she gets very territorial when there is another gargoyle. I don't know, at least that's the way I see it. Whereas Tamara doesn't. Yeah.
Oh, Damona's willing to kill the ones that stand in her way.
Exactly. Whereas I think Tamara more or less would try to see what benefit she could gain.
Yeah, she would. She thinks long term. And I've described this in her personalities. If Damona's a raging inferno, Tamara is an icicle, a razor sharp icicle. I mean, I had that in mind when I was writing the fic that introduces her. Brooklyn's, of course, thinking with his lower head, so he's kind of a little bit blind to what's going on. It was also important to me that this is the last time that Brooklyn confused lust with actual love. So, I mean, I was really proud of that boy when he put his loincloth back on. Literally. They didn't consummate anything. They were literally seconds away from it, and I took that into account. I actually had some back and forth discussions. I was like, you know what, gargoyles mate for life. Don't have them actually consummate. Have them get close, but and then when he calls her out, the personality shift. She reveals her true self. She was before this putting on a bit of an act, pretending. I mean, what she thought she was doing in his best interest, pretending to be this sweet, kind, caring person when she's this really cold-hearted. I mean, she doesn't even get angry. This is one of the things I wrote in her bio. She doesn't roar. She doesn't lose her temper. She's very cold and methodical. But Brooklyn sees the real her in that moment when when all of a sudden she's this ice queen. Which is a bit different than the Tamara I saw on stage, who was kind of a cackling, mad person. But and that was how I was going to write her in TGS, but I realized that wasn't the right move.
Right.
She became her own character, just based on the Shakespeare character. Although I do have the accidental cannibalism in there too.
Yes, you did.
Hey, Shakespeare came up with that. Don't blame me.
No, I thought those scenes were written very well. The two that you just referenced. First, the one where they are very close. And I really think Brooklyn thought he had found the one. And after, of course, they're interrupted before it can even begin. He does see that change in her when he questions her. And you know, maybe not right away. He's probably going to lick his wounds a little bit, but I know he'll be grateful that he didn't go through with that. But the way you wrote that scene, it played out perfectly. You know, it was a little, I don't want to say a little more graphic because it was, but it wasn't. Yeah, but it was a little more graphic, obviously, than anything the show would get away with. But when I was reading it, I could have seen that as part of the show. You know, he gets very close to meeting the person that he thinks is the one. You know, he's been searching so long, and then he realizes what could have happened. So he gets that hindsight.
I mean, I don't know exactly. Yeah, go on.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, and then when, of course, there is that portion with the cannibalism, you know, you wrote that very believable too. And I really liked how you had Brooklyn still licking his wounds. He didn't partake in anything. So he doesn't have to have that on his conscience.
And he almost rescued her too. He considered it, and then he rescued Titus's daughter, Lavinia. In the play, Titus, she doesn't get raped in my fic. I cut that out, although the mutilation and stuff happened.
Yeah,
Titus ends up honor killing her, and I said, no, I'm not doing that. There's no way in hell I'm doing that. That's just, I know Shakespeare wrote it 400 years ago, but I'm not putting that in my story. No, there's no way.
No, absolutely not.
Especially in a series grounded on hope.
Exactly. I was going to say certain traditions need to die once in a while.
Yeah, so Brooklyn grabbed her, and then they time traveled to 2198, and I do have very, 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 very distant plans on bringing this back around with her in 2198. I'll just say, spoiler alert, Tamora's alive in 2198 also, so it's going to be a very long time before I get to that.
So with your group, you know, did you formulate because you all had interest? I mean, obviously in gargoyles, but more about the mythology portion, the Shakespearean portion. You know, what drew you guys together? Have you always known each other?
All of the above, actually. We
okay.
I mean, we used to do that Form Spring role play back in the day, and then we just
and we had a
Skype chat that we used to plan things out, and then that went down, and at some point the itch was got to us when we started to write some fics. And at first I was like, no, I guess I'm going to adapt the stuff we did there in the fics. And then we didn't end up doing that. I mean, some elements are coming back over. My second fic, The Burning Relief, was the most direct adaptation of anything. That's the story with Ishtar, which, and where I bring in, where I turned the pit crew from TGC, although I changed the name, into a pretty much a terror organization, and Thalog does his thing there also, and Demona does something really horrific. She played a small part in that one, and that was a fun one to write. I mean, and I ended up killing her off at the end of that thing. Demona kills her brutally. Then after that, I did the fic Bonds, which was Alisa and Goliath's commitment ceremony.
Yes.
And things just really clicked for me on that one. I'm really proud of that one. And that had a huge cast. It was challenging to write. And I was thinking, and also it's Goliath and Elisa's commitment ceremony. You have to do that right. And I was thinking, I've read a few wedding fics for them, and everyone that has written one before does not have the supervillain attack, because they say, oh, I want to avoid that cliche. I want to avoid that cliche. When every fan fiction author avoids the cliche, is embracing it no longer a cliche.
Right. No, I read Bonds last night again, and that one really is one of my favorites that you've written, because you brought in all the characters, and I thought you brought in all the characters that should have brought in. You brought in Natsalani, you brought in just everybody. It was this huge cast, and they all managed to be together. But yeah, then you did have you had Sherry, of course, telling us the story, and then you had and then you had the actual attack. Yeah,
Demona was fun to write in that one. She's plotting, planning. If she had waited, she could have actually won, but then she hears this thing's going to happen, and she just throws it all to the wind. But yeah, writing that whole sequence where she chases. I mean, she singles out Alisa throughout all this anyway, because that's what she does.
Exactly.
And it was really fun to write. That was also the first time, believe it or not, I've ever actually written Xanatos in a fic, because he was always the most challenging character for me, and I knew I wanted to use him more later. So what I tend to do is, if I find a character challenging, I write a little bit of them in one fic, and then write a whole lot more of them later. So I was able to do that there, and but Demona was the main villain of that fic, and like you said, I teamed her up with Cold Steel there, which made sense to me, because we saw High Noon. Granted, Demona was being controlled by the sisters, but she got along better with him than she did with anybody that we've seen.
Yes.
And I think they have a very complex relationship there. It's definitely brother-sister, and I'm pretty sure part of her still resents him for what he did with Othello, Desdemona, and Goliath back during the Wyvern days. But at the same time, he's not standing in her way. His goals don't disrupt her goals. And if he's willing to help her out, she's willing to take hey, family, what you gonna do? And I have this scene where she pretty much tells young Iago, look, stop stalking my sister. Find somebody else. And now in the present, Coldfire's my enemy. You want her? I'll help you get her. Just help me.
Exactly.
Because Simona's messed up.
It's true.
And as for Natsalani being there, that was laying pipe. We've got plans for Natsalani and Beth later on. So that's not over yet.
Well, I'm excited for that. And I know it was very subtly written, but I also liked that you had, Natsalani trying his chances with Beth. And she lets him know that she's already found a girlfriend, which yay for her.
Yeah, Beth is bi in our fix. Beth is bi.
But I also like how you have that blossoming friendship. He's not deterred by that. So I could tell there's more in their future, and I'm really looking forward to that.
It's that's gonna be fun to get to. I think Chip's gonna handle most of that in his Pendragon fix. Ooh. Arthur needs more knights.
He does, absolutely.
And I think the fic I wrote after that was Double Helix. That one I'm really proud of, because I hadn't watched it in years. TGC episode Generations. I just remembered not liking it, and I also remember being critical of the way some other fanfic authors handled where Demona and Angela go after Hunter's Moon. So I said, okay, I'm gonna take this on myself, and I'm really proud of what I did. Yeah, Demona's manipulating things, but I also don't. But Angela sort of sees through that anyway. It's not like Generations, which, oh my god, I mean, I hadn't watched Generations since it originally aired. After I wrote that fic, I went back and watched it, and I'm thinking, Angela, I love you, but I kind of want to smack you for being an idiot in this one.
Right.
Mhm.
And that's how we always feel about the Goliath Chronicles anyway, but that one especially always seemed like one of the worst. And it really is because she was just so blatantly stupid in how she handled everything.
And nobody brings up, and I know nobody brings up the near genocide in Hunter's Moon. I made sure to bring that. I think I had Broadway and Lexington come up with a laundry list.
Yep, exactly. I also liked the line about where Brooklyn is actually weighing options, and right away Lexington says, "Where's this? It's Damona. Let's kick her ass." Brooklyn, and he's like, "You can find him in the 10th, 11th, 12th." He lists off all the centuries where you can find that Brooklyn.
Yeah, that was so much fun to write. So much fun to write, and I admit when I posted it, I figured some people are going to be pissed off at me for the twist ending, though it didn't happen because we find out that Damona was collaborating with Thalog. I thought that would be more controversial than it actually was. It's funny, the things I think will be controversial turn out not to be.
Well, and truthfully, I wasn't expecting a Generations type ending from you because I knew better. But I was surprised that Damona was the one who was working with Thalog and actually contributed to his collection. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, she gathered Tachi's DNA, little infant Tachi's, at the beginning of the fic, in that scene which a friend of mine called chilling, where Angela and Broadway come back and just see Damona holding the infant.
The infant, right?
And she just hands her back without a fight. But Damona and Thalog had a deal. You help me out here, and you're going to have full access to Nightstone's Unlimited's resources again, so you can continue your little quests to destroy humanity. I mean, Thalog did that, but I also think he likes being able to keep an eye on her also.
Exactly.
Keep your enemies closer.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying that there's going to be tension between them going forward, because obviously there will be. They don't particularly like one another.
Right.
But and I think it's also Cold Steel's acting as a bit of a mediating influence on Damona. He's not a double agent for Thalog. We're not going in that direction, but he's giving Damona advice. Look, you plan things out. Calm down a little bit. I can help you get what you want. Because he's got a cooler head than she does.
Yes.
I mean, she's still in charge there. She takes the lead, but she's listening to him sometimes.
She's listening to him when she wants to.
When she wants to. Yeah, I'm not saying that she won't throw caution to the wind again, but even in the previous Vic Cold Steel said, hey, maybe we should listen to Severius and wait. Then you can unleash this thing in Times Square. It'll be invincible. You'll get your body count.
And she says, no, I need it now.
Yeah. So, but that was a fun fic, revealing the Thalog shock troops and bringing in Goneril and Regan, the two Angela clones.
Yes, and you also hint at Cordelia, who she's not hatched, or hatched, quote unquote. She's not out of the tubes yet.
Yeah, I introduced back in the roleplay. I introduced Cordelia years before I introduced Goneril and Regan, which is funny because here I ended up introducing Goneril and Regan first, but it felt organic to me there. And I just like the idea of Thalog with these two twin Angela bodyguards. He's not doing anything with them at all, but he doesn't mind using the imagery to make his enemies very uncomfortable.
Exactly.
But I assure you, he's not doing anything with them. I mean, I even say at the end that he wanted to create another Delilah before Damona said, my DNA, I'm not part of that clan, my DNA was not part of the bargain. And I hinted someone who might end up hooking up with. Yep. We'll see where that goes. I think she's the perfect match for him.
I think so too. They're both intelligent. They're both very one step ahead of their enemies. I really think those two would work well together.
Yeah, I got a review on Archive of Our Own. Someone wrote one word: Thalog and Tamara. Oh God, I'm not going to be getting any sleep tonight. although we haven't seen them in the same room together yet, and but that was fun. I mean, there was a lot I liked about that fic, and sometimes we also throw in and we do favors for each other. Like there's a scene where they talk about sending Nashville to London for a visit. That's a fic that Chip might end up writing at some point. I'm not doing that, but I threw that in there for him.
I know this might be going above and beyond. I always thought maybe Nashville and Luna, the daughter of Una,
Unette,
yeah. Yeah, Lunette. Thank you.
Luna's the weird sister.
Yes. Lunette. I always thought those two might end up as a couple, but of course we have yet to see. So
Yeah, well, we'll see where things go. And then I think I did Xanadu, the story with the beasts, where Demona goes to China. Xanatos is given an assignment from a really high up member of the Illuminati, Tenzin. And that was fun to write. It was challenging because I don't have any pets. I'm not a pet person, so I remember I kept showing scenes of people I know who have dogs. Like, does this ring true? Does this ring true? The Xanadu stuff I have to credit Chip for. He came up with a lot of that stuff. He did a lot of research into food dogs, and but I do like the idea that Xanatos did a double gambit there because he expected Goliath to be on him. And I had a brief scene with Jackal and Hyena. And remember what I said about taking characters I want to write more of, but giving them smaller scenes and fics? My next fic, which I'm currently working on, features Jackal and Hyena in a much larger part, and actually we're doing the Ultra Pack.
Oh, awesome! You and I talked about that a little bit privately, but I didn't want to pry because I always feel like I'm asking for spoilers. But I'm really looking forward to that because you had mentioned it was your first time writing Jackal and Hyena too.
Yeah, and then I think after that I did the Scottish play, which is a total ripoff of an idea that Greg wanted to do, but I just love that idea, and that was the one where they get sucked into the play, and all I knew about it was that the Weird Sisters are behind it. Goliath is Macduff, Elisa's Lady Macduff, Macbeth and Demona as Macbeth, and Lady Macbeth, Hudson is Duncan, and that the sisters are doing this for revenge. So I had a lot there that was frankly handed to me, not to mention the Shakespearean dialogue. But that being said, adapting that play was challenging. Okay, but see, I'm not going to throw the whole thing in there, and I have to pick what I need, what I don't need. I mean, making those three thugs from Awakening, the three murderers, was my idea.
That was brilliant, by the way.
Yeah, and also that public defender that Alisa hates, we're going to see her again down the line. We have plenty of plans for her. She's not who Alisa thinks she is. Alisa basically thinks she's Saul Goodman, but she really isn't. But yeah, that was fun, and setting up Queen Mab, that whip that's found in Verona. With the map, we're going to see the whip again before we actually see Mab. And I remember thinking that,
go ahead. Yeah.
And I remember thinking, because that whip is mentioned in Shakespeare's play in Mercutio's monologue, and I kept looking around. Has anyone used that whip in any other form of fiction? They haven't. I'm apparently a pioneer.
And I've read a lot of fiction or fan fiction, and I have not seen the whip appear either. Not even
in fanfic, but in general fiction.
You have braved the path.
Yeah, that's not my next story. That's going to be the story after the next one of the Ultra Pack. Yeah, Demona's not in the Ultra Pack story, and I feel like when I write a fic that she's not in, it's kind of a big deal.
But you have the Ultra Pack to worry about, so that's going to take up plenty of creative juices instead of just having Demona, right?
Yeah, it is. That story has three main villains. Xanatos, again, putting him in the main villain spot. Coyote, and a new character who I will just refer to right now is Miss Lafayette.
We've talked about her too.
I'm sure you can figure it out.
Yeah.
And also, the only thing I'll say is that Miss Lafayette is really not mine. I just ended up having the privilege of introducing her. She's Chip's. Chip is really going to use her in his Pendragon fix, and I just gave away who she is.
Only if people are paying attention.
Yes. Although the alias is pretty obvious, she's not being subtle.
Right.
But yeah, I'm partway through this fic, and action sequences are one of my weaknesses. They kind of scare me, and it's a pack story, so I'm gonna have to write a bunch of them. So I'm working hard on it, and there's also a Redemption Squad cameo in that one. And remember what I said about cameos for later larger parts? So
yes,
I've got plans for them as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be doing any more Time Dancer stories. I mostly did that one just because I needed to introduce Tamara somehow, and
right.
Because she needed an origin story.
I was going to say, do you prefer writing then, beyond Hunter's Moon, you prefer to stick to that Gargoyles continuation, or do you like, dipping into the Time Dancer?
I enjoy it, but But I feel like I like playing with the whole gang, not just Brooklyn. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I'll never write another Time Dancer story if an idea
Right.
strikes me. Eventually I might want to do 2198, but right now I'm sticking with present day, my own fix. Right now I've got a timeline from 1999 to 2012.
Perfect.
And it also is a bit of a teaser. This is a story that makes me very nervous. I am seriously considering, I have outlined it, I might change my mind doing a 9/11 story as well, just for me to help me wrestle with my own demons over that day.
Oh.
Mm.
And I wasn't going to, but I came up with an angle that nobody really thought of, and I don't mind saying it now. I mean, obviously this happens while most of our cast is asleep. The clan is stone. Alisa works a night shift, so she's home
Mm-hmm.
asleep, and I'm thinking a character this could affect. I mean, who could be awake, who is someone whose head we haven't really dived into, and I'm thinking she finished work at Nightstone. Thalag has gone to sleep.
Mhm.
Who is our only canonical Muslim character?
Oh, Sherry.
Yeah. Also, it's a good way of illustrating that the Illuminati had nothing to do with this. No advance warning, but how
Mhm.
Sherry reacts to this. She's a Muslim, and there's been a
Yeah.
lot of Islamophobia since then, and
Oh, that's going to be fantastic if you
Yeah,
write it.
Mm.
yeah, the story is not just going to focus on her, but she's going to be a very important half plot. The other half will
Yeah.
be how our main characters react to the whole
Mhm.
thing. And I'm not going to undermine what happened that day if I do write it. I might still chicken out, but it was
Right.
it was a Sherry angle that really gave me the inspiration to go for it.
To go for it. Absolutely. No, I definitely don't want you to rush it, but I can't wait to read your take on that.
I mean, it's obviously we're still I'm working on a timeline, so I'm still a little bit away from there. So but
Mhm.
the next story is the Ultra Pack, which I'm titling Fusion. Then after that's the Whip of Map story. I don't have a title for that one yet. The Ultra
Mhm.
Pack story also, the clan that gets the focus in it is going to be Lexington and Stagheart.
Yay! I love
And-
those two.
Yeah, me too. And this will be new territory for me as well, because Stagheart and Lexington are mates in this, and I'm just writing them the way I would any other couple. I'm not shining a spot. I'm not making a big deal out of it. I'm just treating them like normal people.
Absolutely. I
They
think that's
have
perfect.
Yeah, I mean, although I open it with this thing which is ties up, because remember the Scottish play Lexington started a business. I opened it in the scene, and when I was outlining it, I have Angela saying, "You need to tell Goliath. You need to come clean about Goliath." I'm reading the outline again, and I'm thinking, "Oh my God! If I write it like this, people will think you need to come out of the closet with Goliath." And Goliath is not a homophobe, so it's about how Goliath wouldn't understand the notion of a gargoyle starting a business.
Gotcha.
So there's going to be a little bit of conflict there. Goliath doesn't
Yes.
mind their orientation at all. I mean, Greg has even said that gargoyles are way more progressive about this sort of thing than humans have ever been.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just a natural part of life. I mean, it exists in the animal kingdom.
Mhm.
Because I've read fics in the past written by people who I'm not going to name that have depicted Goliath as a raging homophobe, and that's just not how I see him at all.
That's not how I see him at all either. I always pictured homosexual relationships as just a part of the clan. Like they would just accept it as they accept everything else. I don't think they would even bat an eye at it, truthfully.
Nor do I. But it's but yeah, the Ultra Pack story is going to be the most challenging at the moment, just because of, aside from 9/11, just because of all the action sequences that I have to do, and I'm constantly showing my collaborators, how does this read? How does this read? Any suggestions? Because the nature of their upgrades are going to be different than what we've seen in other fics. TGS did the Ultra Pack and mostly turned them into more extreme versions of what they already were. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to do something a little bit more unique. And you know, I don't mind saying it, since I completely gave away who the third person collaborated in all this is. They're going to be somewhat upgraded with magic.
Oh, that'll be and this is a different character than Ms. Lafayette.
No, it is Miss Lafayette who.
Oh, it is.
Let's just say after the events of City of Stone, we know that Xanatos and Damona's partnership fell apart. Xanatos has been looking for another sorcerer to collaborate with on projects that he needs for a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
He found one, or rather one came to him. because you're Xanatos, you want to have access to that sort of thing, and he's not gonna weaponize his son.
No, definitely not.
But you want to be able to have that resource, and so he finds one. He finds Miss Lafayette, or rather, Miss Lafayette finds him. It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
In my mind, Miss Lafayette is voiced by goddamn it, I know her name. I'm a huge fan of her. Haley Atwell.
Oh, okay.
Agent Carter.
Yeah. Playing a villain. Hey, if Deanna Troi can play a bad guy, why not Agent Peggy
Exactly. Why not Agent Carter?
But that's where we are now, and I think out of all my fics, the two that I'm the proudest of are there's still Rhapsody, which is part of the timeline. That's always going to be one I'm the most proud of. But out of the batch of new ones, it's got to be Bonds and Double Helix.
I can see that, because when I was reading them, all of the other stories are phenomenal too, but you can see the fun that you were having with some of the situations in those two as well. So yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah,
there's a moment in Double Helix where, because this takes place after the comics, so Angela still has the new outfit from the comics, where Damona's trying to make nice. I like your new outfit, and Angela's like, I've been wearing this for over 2 years.
For 2 years, yeah.
Well,
typical mom-daughter exchange, right?
That they barely see each other, and she's trying to make small talk, but but part of Angela still wants to give her the benefit of the doubt, and I even made sure to make a point at the end that Angela says, "Yeah, you know what? I embraced her at the end, but you know what? I'm not going. I'm not under any delusions that it's going to change her or anything." And and there's a moment there at the end where Damona says, I would like to see more of you. And Angela says, look, we cannot have a relationship if you're going to continue to try to trick humanity. And then she says, oh, okay, meet me halfway and at least stop trying to kill Alisa. And Damona's eyes just burn red, and she glares at Alisa right there. And Angela doesn't even need to hear anymore. She just says, okay, I guess I have my answer. Because Damona's not going to do that. And
it's not going to change.
And that was, in a way, me kind of nodding not too flatteringly at a TGS story where Angela says to Damona, stop. If you ever hurt Alisa again, I'm never going to speak with you again. And Damona does it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the way I read Angela, she's nowhere near that naive, and Damona's not even going to pretend to lie about that one. Granted, she probably would have if not her initial reaction just getting ahead of her. Because she hates Alisa's guts.
She totally does. Greg, we are going to have to wrap this up because Carell has something she needs to get to, but we would love to continue this with you if you're game for it.
Oh, I'm definitely game for it. Oh, and by the way, Carell, Le Pen lost.
Yeah, I know. I'm following.
So we're ending on. So this is where we ended. Le Pen lost. Fascism and bigotry lost. It's a Gargoyles thing.
It's a Gargoyles Day. Carell has some celebration to go to.
Kind of, yeah.
It was great, and we have to continue with Awakenings parts 3, 4, and 5.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on today. Thank you for telling us more about your fan fictions. We'll have more questions for you next time we meet. But this has been an absolute pleasure.
Definitely.
Yeah, it was nice.
Thank you for having me again.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful day.
And maybe we should give the answer to the trivia? Or do you want us to wait for the next time?
Why did I think I said...
No, give the answer. We'll come up with another one next time.
Yeah, we'll come up with another one. Real quickly, before we wrap up, we'll give the answer to the trivia. Hudson receives his sword in Awakening Part 2. So even though certain episodes, may depict him with the sword, that's actually an animation error. He does not have the sword until Awakening Part 2. So for those of you who guessed correctly, congratulations. For those of you who didn't, now you learned something. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day, everybody.
See you next time.
Bye.